long ago and far away, or maybe just yesterday and just around the corner, or maybe somewhere halfway in between. There was a town that sat, quiet and content, tucked into the shadow of a mountain. And carved on the side of that mountain, big and tall so no one could miss them, were the words, "No." No one knew where the words came from or why they were there. They'd always been there. But oh my goodness, the people who lived in that town, cuddled into that mountain, were glad to have those words there. Because whenever the townspeople had a question, all they had to do was look up at the mountain, and the answer said, "No." Making decisions was simple, and life went on smoothly and easily in the town, cuddled into the mountain, until, of course, one day. Now, on that particular day, Ma Custis was about to make dinner for her family, and she just couldn't decide, because sometimes you can't, whether to make stew or steak, pasta or potatoes, dumplings or donuts, so she went into the yard.
"Should I make liver for dinner tonight?"
she asked and looked up at the mountain, and the mountain said,
All right, I knew that already. Nobody really likes liver. Should I make steak for dinner tonight?
and the mountain said,
All right, should I make chicken? Should I make tacos or tofu or baked beans or broccoli, pork chops or popcorn?
Ma Custis asked more and more questions until the sun disappeared behind the mountain. She kept on asking questions until the sun came up and around the other way, and all the mountain ever said was, "No." Because Ma couldn't get an answer that was any kind of answer, she and her family went all night and all the next day and all the next night without dinner. Finally, Ma just gave up and made liver anyway.
That's what you get.
Even though the mountain said no, and even though everyone hated liver, because liver was the first thing she'd thought of, but Ma Custis had had enough. She glared at the mountain, stamped her foot, and shook her fist.
Why is the answer always no? Why can't you just say yes for once?
Ma turned around, stomped away to ring the town bell and call a town meeting. Well, when that bell rang, the whole town came running. From the oldest man with the longest beard to the youngest kids who still needed carrying, no one would miss a town meeting. They all came and they all listened carefully as Ma Custis told her story.
Seems to me that we've got a problem. The mountain just isn't helping as it should. Seems to me it would be nice if the mountain said yes once in a while.
The townsfolk knew that Ma Custis had a point. They didn't much like this idea, changing something that had been the same for so long. But after they thought, and then they thought some more, they finally nodded solemnly. The mountain would have to be recarved. Mason Sharp, yes, Mason Sharp, the stone carver, nodded along with the rest of them. He scratched his nose, adjusted his cap, and slowly gazed up the length of the mountain. Then he cleared his throat and said in his gravelly voice,
Looks to me like I could do the carving if it's all right with all of you.
And so it was. Mason spent the next 2 weeks up on the side of the mountain, chiseling and chipping and carving away, and coming down only when it got too dark to see. The tape's not working, okay. And when he was done, the mountain said, yes. Mason rang the bell to call the town together, and once again they all came running, from the oldest woman with the whitest hair to the youngest kids who still needed carrying. They all wanted to see the new sign, and they all wanted to cheer for the stone carver and all his hard work. Ma Custis, who had started all of this, came right up to the front of the crowd. She figured she ought to be the person who asked the first question to this new and different mountain, since she discovered the problem with the old one. She stepped right up to the foot of the mountain, looked way up to the top, and asked,
Should I make liver tonight?
And the mountain said, well, now Ma Custis almost fell over with surprise.
But Pa Custis told me he would never forgive me if I made liver again. And all my kids threatened to hide in the barn for a week. Should I really serve liver?
And the mountain said, the townspeople began to grumble. They didn't like the sound of this. Ma Custis' family grumbled the loudest.
But I can't. I just cannot serve liver again. I promised that I wouldn't. Are you telling me I should break my promise?
The mountain said, the grumbling got louder, and Ma Custis, well, she glared at the mountain again, stamped her foot and shook her fist. She turned to the townspeople and said,
this just isn't right. What are we gonna do?
Once again, the townspeople put on their thinking caps. Everyone thought, Ma Custis, Pa Custis, and all the Custis kids who probably thought the hardest of all because they were worried they were about to get liver again for dinner. Finally, the smallest one of the Custis kids piped up, why does there have to be just one answer? Can't we have more? Sorry, that was your line. The townspeople gasped. No one had ever thought of such a thing before. They mumbled and grumbled and talked amongst themselves. Finally, they decided the mountain ought to say, the answer is sometimes yes, and sometimes no, and sometimes wait and see, and sometimes I just don't know. Mason, the stone carver, who had been listening to all of this talk, cleared his throat, scratched his nose, and adjusted his cap.
I think I could do it. I don't mind, not really, even if I just finish carving in the new change, but, well, it's gonna take a lot of time and I can't work all day long on it like I did last time. How about if I work on it when I can and we'll hang up some kind of sign on the mountain that lets people know that the answer is coming.
And so it was. The funny thing was that for a little while, Mason worked on the mountain every day. And for a little while, everyone in town waited eagerly to see what the new answer was. But soon the stonemason got tired of climbing the mountain every day, and everyone got tired of waiting. And they all started asking each other questions and helping everyone else find answers that seemed to fit. The townspeople realized that different questions usually had different answers, that sometimes the same question had more than one answer, and that there were many more answers than they had imagined. And all of that was fine with them. After a while, they thought that maybe the answer the mountain was giving them right then was just as it was better, more sensible than any other answer it had given. And so they left it as it was. And the mountain said, under construction.